Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. This is Logic Over Impulse with your hosts, mir+Harry.
Harrison Bell.
Today we have a really exciting episode for you. Obviously going to be touching on some tariffs that are going on if you're, listening to this soon after the beginning of April. And then we're going to be touching on a little bit of the college life Q&A and, kind of how the political sphere is affecting us as NYU students. I think it's going to be an interesting one. What do you think?
I think that sounds great.
All right.
First of all, number one headline in the news these days is tariffs.
Yeah.
Economists are very unoptimistic.
Yes.
Students are very unoptimistic, as are business owners, and not to mention small business owners, right?
Definitely.
Okay, so pretty much every U.S. major market index is down. The Dow, the S&P, the Russell 2000, all of it is down extremely, to unbelievable measures, right?
We're down to the 2020, around
when March 2020 when COVID happened. Everything is down, right to that level.
Does that concern you at all?
No. Because I don't get concerned over the stock market. I believe in the American economy, man.
I agree. I think what a lot of people are missing out is the stock market is a good indicator of the economy, but it's not the thing that moves the needle. At the end of the day, the stock market is just about how many other people buy or sell that particular stock.
All supply and demand.
It's all supply and demand. So you can kind of make some inferences about the stock market, but you cannot use it as the whole and sole indicator of the economic, spectrum.
I would even go as far to say that you should not be incredibly nervous or wary of the stock market, really, unless you're about to retire, because we're going to keep growing. No matter what Trump is, what Trump's doing, no matter what the president after Trump does, if that's J.D. Vance, if that's AOC, we don't know who it's going to be.
That's right.
Gavin Newsom, hopefully not, but Gavin Newsom. He is a smart guy, and his podcast is pretty interesting. But unfortunately, his politics are really terrible. Just pathetic politics. But let me tell you this. So essentially, what everybody is doing these days is they're moving their money from brokerage accounts, investment accounts into money market funds and cash investments. Everybody, and even though interest rates are lower from what they were at the 2022 and 2023 highs, interest rates are down a little bit, but people are still choosing these money market funds and cash investments as a place to put their money in this time of economic uncertainty. So when you're wondering what people are doing when they're selling their stocks, Wall Street Journal has been reporting that they are essentially, purchasing cash investments. They're not buying real estate. They're not buying CD. They are buying CDs and money market funds.
The thing that makes me think about is people hoarding cash is not quite good for the economy because, part of the GDP, it's consumption, investments, net exports, and government spending. And part of it is the consumption part. And if people are not consuming, if people are not buying in the economy, that actually will affect GDP.
Yeah, that M1 money supply is not included, right?
Okay. No, I don't believe.
I don't believe so either.
Now, at the end of the day, if you're reading these headlines, a lot of pessimism, and I don't see one economist saying that tariffs are a good thing. I don't see one economist saying that we're going to be all right. Of course, pessimism pays a whole lot more than optimism, and we know this because we have a podcast. So obviously saying controversial stuff is definitely a little bit more profitable. But why do you think, what's your opinion on these tariffs? Are you fully against them? Are you nay? Or do you have a little bit of yay in you about these tariffs?
It's really hard to say because without enormous amounts of data in front of me, I can't make an incredibly educated decision. But then again,
what's your heart telling you?
My heart is telling me that we're okay, right? I would not put it past President Trump and his administration to make a rash and somewhat isolationist decision like these tariffs are clearly being labeled as. Right. But then again, all this narrative the narrative about Trump has shifted in the last 10 years. And what essentially the left originally tried to paint him out as a complete narcissist, clown, rapist, just absolutely brutal human being.
And this is 2016.
2017, 2018. And obviously the January 6th stuff did not help, but he has just been pulverized by the left since since he announced his presidential race, his race for president.
Right.
But what's interesting is, clearly Trump has defeated all of these allegations, right? There are some that he hasn't, right? But he's overcome it, right? So I believe that he has there's something about him that is he's motivated to keep on going for the for the greater good of our country.
Well, that's what he talks about a lot. Is he says, well, this is a temporary measure. We're going to have some growing pains. He uses this language a lot in his speeches and in his addresses to the public. And he's saying, well, the economy might be down a little bit. The stock markets might be down. He hasn't even ruled out the possibility of a potential recession. But at the same time, he thinks it's going to be for the greater good in the end. And what's your opinion there? I mean, do you think tariffs at the end are going to bring a little bit more good than bad?
Well, economists sure do think that we might be headed towards a recession, if not stagflation. Do you know stagflation?
I do.
Yeah. So that's the notion where the economy really keeps growing, but inflation is. So inflation is occurring, but the economy is not growing at all, essentially.
Right.
So really not what you want, in theory, not what you want.
No, it's not. Okay. Now, so at the end of the day, do you believe in Trump's long-term economic plan, and are you willing to stick it out with him?
I think he believes in it, so I'm willing to stick it out.
Okay, fair enough.
I think he believes in it, so I'm willing to stick it out. I think we will feel some pain, as Trump said, but
fair enough.
See.
I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing about it is the soft power that comes with it. We had a commenter on the first podcast that talked a lot about, actually very thoughtful comment about what does it mean for America to lose a lot of its soft power. And to me, that is the dollar dominated world order. At this point, all transactions, even between countries that don't have anything to do with the U.S., go through the dollar.
Yes, they do.
And why? It's because dollar is a very stable figure. It's a very stable transactor.
Yes.
Between when making these deals between two countries. So for example, Ecuador and Sweden, two countries on opposite sides of the globe, basically, are doing a deal. They'll go through America and they'll go through the dollar, American banks and whatnot to do it. And my issue, with that is that might change. If we're seeing the dollar. If we're seeing America, if the world is seeing America as kind of a shifting landscape, it's not very good for investment, and maybe the new administration might come around and change a whole lot of stuff, and very unpredictable. That actually doesn't bode well for us, because maybe the world might see that and kind of move against the dollar-led world order.
I think that's possible for sure. Are you familiar with kind of foreign exchange market arbitrage, essentially?
No.
So essentially, where companies, even like China, even to this day, a country as powerful as China, and Mir and I here are absolutely. I don't want to speak for him, but I am absolutely of the belief that China could easily overtake the U.S. on a global scale.
100%.
They just have people and infrastructure that U.S. it's faltering behind. But essentially, what they're still doing to this day is, if they need to influence the price of the yen, they will buy X amount of US dollars, and essentially to regulate the price of the yen in their country.
Oh wow, really?
By keeping a certain amount of USD, a stockpile
right.
of USD, they can influence the supply and demand of their own currency, essentially.
And that makes sense for keeping the yen strong and stable for investment purposes, right?
They want to keep it. They want to keep it strong. If they want to weaken it a little bit, they can weaken it, depending on how much US dollars they hold in their reserves.
I haven't heard of this actually. I need to read up a little bit more about
It's pretty incredible, honestly, and it shows you that here in America we're still on top, and we need to tread carefully, because I would like to remain on top.
I agree. I think that, and this is my biggest concern, I think the thing about the tariffs that is making a lot of people concerned is not the fact that they're happening. I think a lot of people think that some tariffs in some degree is at the end of the day a good thing. But the way it's happening, it's a sweeping tariff across all products. There's no differentiation between any categories, manufacturing versus, for example, minerals. There's no differentiation for a lot of these countries. So, for example, of course, Vietnam or Thailand is going to put a large import tariff on American-made motorcycles, because a lot of people their economy depends on this, on domestic manufacturing of scooters and motorcycles and mopeds and whatnot. So of course they're going to put a tariff on America for that. And I don't see, the benefit of putting that, or just a reciprocal tariff, blindly putting a reciprocal tariff right back. I think what Trump is trying to do is a bit of a scare tactic, and I understand it, but it's not, perhaps what I would do in his situation, just because I think it might soften some of America's soft power. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are not happy about this, and we're seeing a lot of protests break out over this issue.
Tons.
Have you seen them?
So I've heard about it all over the country. We're experiencing protests that are really in against Trump and against his administration's recent tariffs. That's been what's going on. And it's really caused quite a big stir that actually hasn't been covered a ton in the media, but there are very strong protests erupting all over.
Yeah, I think the media a little bit is scared to be on Trump's bad side about this all right now. But at the end of the day, I actually have not seen as much protest as I imagined with Trump being elected.
In general, yes.
It took me as a bit of a surprise. I kind of was thinking that if Trump ever gets elected, November 6th, I believe it was, right? November 6th. I thought that day would be a day of mayhem in New York City. I thought people would, start lighting garbage bins on fire and all this other stuff that, historically liberals have done in response to a lot of the things Trump has done. But it's actually been really calm. And even the protests around NYU, we should talk about that a little bit. The protests around NYU, which have mostly been about, Israel and Palestine, have not really touched on Trump a whole lot. And it's really surprising to me. Have you seen some protests around NYU specifically?
I've seen less protests about Trump than I have about Linda Mills and her really what they claim to be her kind of what she's giving compliance with Israel. And I think it's absolutely baloney, frankly.
Yeah.
I think Linda Mills is actually, for preference, Linda Mills is our president here at NYU.
NYU, yeah.
And she, I actually think she's condemned, things, anti-Semitic hate extremely well. Mm-hmm. At the same time, while providing support to the Palestinian supporters.
So the thing about it is, I was studying last semester for the finals, and that's one of the first semesters where I really locked in for finals, for sophomore year,
sure.
Kind of fall semester. Freshman year, I took it easy, but sophomore year, I was locking in for the finals at Bopes Library. That's the main library at NYU, and I saw a big, kind of cloth poster come down, and it was a protest about NYU's involvement in Palestine, in Israel and Palestine, and I saw very loud chants. And then the next day, buddy, do you remember? Harrison and I, we had a philosophy class together, and we had a final for global works with Dr. Katz, a great professor, by the way. Dr. Katz, if you're listening to this, we loved your class. Yes. And we were going to that class, and we actually had the Palestinian protesters blocking our way. I mean, we were actually very lucky to get in that day, because we got in around 4 hours before they fully blocked it off, or maybe 4 hours after. I don't remember which one it was, but they had their hands duct taped together. And to me,
so we got in there a few hours after they came. They were duct taped together in protest here, and here we are outside attempting to get into our private education library or building
that we pay a lot of money for.
We pay a lot of money for, and these people really have absolutely no authority to be restricting our entry in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so what we ended up actually finding out is that a lot of those students were not even NYU.
That's right.
Or a lot of those people were not even NYU, but some of them were, but not all of them. And to me, that seems like it's diluting the message at the end of the day.
Right, and a lot of those arrests so there were a lot of arrests over that period of time, and a lot of the protests against Linda Mills were talking about unfair treatment of the Palestinians, effectively.
Yeah, so a lot of those protests were actually in response to what NYU had done to break up these protests. And at the end of the day, you just have to look at the general kind of consensus around what is allowed and what is not allowed in terms of student conduct at NYU. And what's not allowed is, putting up signs is one thing that's not allowed of any kind. I could put up a sign about us playing basketball later today, and that would not be allowed, just the same way that putting up a sign about Palestine would not be allowed. But the other thing obviously was blocking a lot of the access for Jewish students.
Right.
There was a lot of kind of figuring out if you were Jewish or not, and kind of discriminating, kind of looking at the students who are looking at each other and saying, oh, well, maybe you might be Jewish, you might be not, and whatnot, and restricting them that way. I think that's not right. It's just a very blatant anti-Semitism. But to that point, also this week we had a bit of an incident, actually a very large incident. I shouldn't say it, but I don't want to minimize it. But an incident in the Muslim praying room,
right.
I should say in just a praying room, but maybe perhaps in the Muslim anti-Muslim hate at NYU, and we condemn that fully as well.
Of course, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, well, do you want to let's liven this conversation up a little bit with some questions.
Q&A.
Yeah, we don't want to be fading too much.
Absolutely.
If you're still listening to us here.
A little Q&A. Let's do it.
Do you want to start us off, buddy?
Sure thing. So I have a couple questions for you. Let's start over with about your finances. Right, we got these tariffs looming over us. Let's see what we can come up with.
Okay.
So first of all, I want to know what you're doing with your own money right now. I want to know if you're, are you buying into this big sell-off? Are you putting your money in money market funds, or are you just going to believe in the S&P 500?
So here's what I've done with my kind of career investing journey. So far, I couldn't wait to turn 18 when I was 17. I couldn't wait to turn 18 to start a brokerage account and kind of put my money where my mouth is about investments.
Sure.
And you and I, we worked at Killer Burger, so I actually ended up saving some of that money and putting it into the stock market. So at the end of the day, I did a little bit of stock picking just because I wanted to feel like, that's my money. I wanted to do some research on it.
Yep.
So most of my money went to two funds. One is the S&P 500, very stable, very
just a value index fund.
You're just basically betting on the U.S. economy at that point.
Sure.
But my second fund was it's called FSCLX. It's a mutual fund specifically for semiconductor companies. Mm-hmm. So that is NVIDIA.
Is it a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund?
I don't know, actually. I don't want to be wrong in this situation. So I don't want to say specifically, but it might be an ETF or a mutual fund. I don't know exactly. But at the end of the day, I believe it's a mutual fund, by the way.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
But at the end of the day, it's investing in not only semiconductor designers, but also semiconductor manufacturers. And that actually was the bulk of my profit for a few years there, since high school up until now. I think I had made around 100, maybe 125% on my investment over 2 years, which is a great return. But ever since the sell-off, obviously that's gone down. Now you asked me, am I worried about the sell-off? Am I selling off my own stocks? I'll tell you one quick answer, and that is no. I'm not playing the same game as a hedge fund manager. I'm not playing the same game as even any kind of investment firm at all. At the end of the day, all I'm doing is I just want to diversify my portfolio and make it so that at 65, I'm able to potentially retire and have a nice life and have enough money to kind of call my own, maybe, set up my kids for college and whatnot. So at the end of the day, I'm not playing the same game as these guys that are selling off. I don't need to sell it off. My game is consistency in investing throughout recessions, but also investing throughout growth periods. I want to know what you've done with your money.
I have done the same, although I have dived a little bit into crypto recently.
Oh yeah, that's so funny you asked that, because that was a question I was going to ask you. What do you think about crypto? Are you in or are you out?
So I am relatively high on crypto, and the reason being is because I actually think that during this, kind of economic uncertainty about global events, I think people might start to put their faith more into something that they get so fed up with what's going on in the world and feeling almost helpless against politicians. Although I don't think they should feel that way, but I think that's what they do. I think they're going to start putting their faith in something that they potentially don't understand as much.
Oh, interesting. I see. That's
also something that is, crypto's been so volatile recently, and it always is really, but it's been so volatile. I really do think that these folks are, that is something that's completely dependent on supply and demand.
Oh yeah. 100%.
The U.S. stock market is too, but crypto is just is so arbitrary.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and that's why I'm not for it. I think the U.S. stock market, of course, is based on supply and demand, the equities market,
right?
But at least there's some indicators that you can look for to see if the stock is going to go up or down. That's, maybe the cash flow, the balance sheet, the annual report of a company, how they do. We talked about how these things are not the drivers, but they can indicate certain things about a company. So I don't believe in crypto. I think that it's potentially a gimmick that is very vulnerable to scams as well. Haktua, the Haktua
coin, the pump and dump.
What do you know about the pump and dump Haktua coin?
I know that she released a coin, a meme coin, and by the way, why are they called meme coins?
I think it's because it kind of blows up on TikTok and people start buying it just for the fun of it, not really for much else, just for that.
And then you just have something that's artificially inflated by a bubble, essentially. Just a bubble.
Of course, Haktua herself has a lot of stake in that coin.
Oh, and then
she made the coin,
she just sold all that stake as soon as that price went up and
come on,
cashed out.
That's just straight fraud. It's straight fraud.
Bitcoin is a little different in Ethereum because they have a little bit more of a tie to a much broader base of investors. But I do think that, I don't understand them enough by any means to be, obviously we're not giving advice on what to buy and what not to buy in terms of stocks and crypto, but I just think I'm a little bit intrigued by it, but I would not put vast amounts of money. I do not have very much money in crypto, my own money. I believe in S&P 500, but most of all, I believe in real estate. I believe in investing in cash flow producing real estate. That's my game right there.
Okay. We should really talk more about this because, as you know, if you've been following us, we started a real estate wholesaling firm together. So we definitely know a lot about the real estate business these days. I think much more than the average 19, 20-year-old.
I would also say much more than we know about the financial business too. And that's, and that, there's advantages to both, right? You never really see a real. There are obviously many billionaires that have made their fortune in real estate. Our president being one of them. Stephen Ross being another is actually an amazing developer.
I don't know Stephen Ross.
He's the guy who did Hudson Yards, and he's now opening up.
I do know him. Yeah.
But there's far more who have made, really in the tens of billions from starting something like a hedge fund, right? And so I think there's a little bit, there's a few more ways that to get stocks a little bit, to shoot up and down in price. But I think that's what makes real estate such a great investment for the individual, right? It's really stable.
It's a little more stable.
It's stable, man. Everybody needs a house over their head. And people are going to be renting for the dawn of time. And actually, what I do want to note is that people actually will think that it's a waste of money to rent sometimes, right? If you can afford it,
I could see that,
but it's not. Because when you think about the real cost of home ownership, you can think, okay, well, why am I paying $2,000 in rent when I could be paying, $2,000 in a mortgage, right? And obviously, you need a down payment and whatnot. But let me tell you, there are costs associated with a $2,000 mortgage that you won't even begin to think about. I mean, there's taxes, more maintenance and headaches than you can ever imagine. Right now, we're renting a place. Our super lives literally in the unit right above us, literally right over there.
No, that's pretty fantastic.
And we just text him up. We say, hey, man, our washer broke. Our washer's broke. By the next day, brand new washer.
That's right.
Right in our unit, brand new washer. Yeah. Microwave broke. Hey, man, can you come over here and help us out with this microwave? Showed up the next day, brand new microwave sitting in there.
Yeah,
right?
And of course that's not always how it works with people renting, but the landlord does usually play a presence, and I totally agree with you. And
you should never, at least financially, obviously we do live in a spot with a live-in super, but you should never be on the hook for paying for your appliances and maintenance the same way that you are, nor dealing with it, which is almost as annoying being a homeowner.
That is 100% true.
Right.
Right. Now, kind of a little bit on a lighter note, and we should continue the real estate stuff. I think we should do a whole podcast talking about our real estate business. If you're still watching, please comment, like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow us up if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
We're on every social media account.
We're on everything. That's right. Yeah. Now, moving on to kind of a bit of a topical question. Who are your top three guests?
Top three guests
that you would love to have on this podcast.
Number one is Donald Trump, because I think Trump can provide. I would not ask him the questions that everybody else has asked him, because I think it would be really tough to get him to answer in a unique way. But I'd still try, because I think that I really want to just get to the human side of him. Right? I want to know what sports team he's watching on Saturday night. I want to know, what he talks about on the golf course. Yeah. With his buddies.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
He's been so hated, and just torn apart by really the majority of the country at some point in the last 8 years. He might be the most loved and hated guy on the planet at the same time, while being the most powerful man.
That's very true.
And I just think it'd be really interesting to just kind of get to know him as a person and kind of see what he's like.
Do you think he'll even answer your personal questions? I mean, I think
he's good at not answering questions like that.
First of all, he is great, and he's also really good at another thing, which is walking out of interviews.
And he's good at that too. So we'd have to install a couple more locks on the door, but
Oh, that's how you're gonna go about it?
No, I'm just kidding. But
maybe we can get through to Trump through Mr. Barron.
Yeah, through Barron. Yes, so his son does go to NYU. Yeah. So so let's talk about that. So next, that's number one. Let's go number two. Number two, I'm gonna say is it's a good question. So it would be, my other two would be filled with two working class people from different parts of America. I want one working class person from the South who is a big conservative, and I want one working class person from California, somewhere maybe San Francisco, who is a
middle class,
bleeding.
You said, right?
I think working class, honestly. Working class is just a bleeding heart liberal, and I want to see just what kind of differences in every way, in personality, in belief system, in how they view religion and how they view money. I want to understand, really just pick their brains and just kind of listen to their life stories, how they became to believe politically what they believe in.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
We're right back, just like we never left.
That's right. So those are your three guests. One would be Donald Trump. One would be a working class person from the left.
And the others are a working class person from the right.
Good.
That's absolutely right.
Good. Now, do you think I should give my top three as well? Fair enough?
No, I don't care.
No?
You can do it. Yeah,
so number one person I respect a lot, and I really hope can kind of maybe put himself out there a little bit, go on a smaller show with some NYU students and kind of bring out that side of him, is Scott Galloway. Scott Galloway is a really smart guy. He's a professor of marketing at NYU Stern, but he's really more of a celebrity professor. We don't see him much on campus. We certainly can't take a class with him because we're not in Stern ourselves, but I'd love to have him. I think his podcast is so interesting, and the way he talks about things, he's very concerned about young men like us. So yes, maybe talking about young men and kind of our experience might interest him a little bit. And I'd love to actually have him come on our podcast because it might shine some light on kind of his personal side, maybe aside from his politics, aside from his business and whatnot. Another person that I would love to have is LeBron James. And I don't say that just from a sports fanatic kind of side of me. I think he's done a lot of things to prepare for post-retirement that a lot of players have not. Of course, I'm really into basketball myself, but that's pretty inspiring to me. Is he has a lot of businesses of his own, and I think you share the sentiment about LeBron.
I'd say so.
Yeah, and third person that I would have is probably a kind of more of a richer billionaire. How did you make it type of thing? I would say Ken Griffin would be my number three person. I think Ken Griffin, starting a hedge fund, age 21, really started out of his dorm room at Harvard, is extremely impressive. I mean, he said it himself that it was time of economic growth, a lot of globalization, a lot of kind of, a lot of growth at that time in the late 80s, early 90s when he first started. But nonetheless, it's just extremely impressive to be able to start that. A lot of, seasoned career finance veterans cannot do this to this day. So the fact that he was able to do it and secure a lot of money in funding, 4.6 million, I believe it was. It's super impressive to me.
To be honest, I'm kind of, honestly, I'm looking to Ken Griffin, and I'm asking him for inspiration on how I can kind of forego the traditional path like we've talked about. If my, honestly, kind of a goal in life is that after, maybe by 21, 22, I never have a single W-2 paycheck in my whole life.
Really?
That's kind of what I would like.
Well, you better get on it.
You better get on it. And I would love Ken Griffin to really hype me up, get me excited about that, and really show me that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
He didn't fail, but it's still okay.
I'm sure he failed a little bit.
I mean,
somewhere
in many ways, I'm
there,
sure he did. Everybody fails. That's how you learn, and that's completely okay.
Yeah.
But you can't obviously fail forever as an entrepreneur because you just can't.
True.
Unless you got somebody bankrolling you, which most entrepreneurs don't have.
100%.
So the next question I got for you is actually, about wealth, and Ken Griffin is worth, billions and billions of dollars. So I want to ask you if generational wealth is really just another form of wealth inequality. I mean, is it just a legal form? Being able to pass your wealth down through the generations. Is it just simply a legal form of wealth inequality?
That's a great question. I think wealth inequality a lot of time is talked through in the gender and race lens of it all. And here's what I believe is, yes, it's a huge step up ahead. Really in two things. Number one is having wealthy parents is able to get you to a great prestigious university, which is then able to get you a job in a prestigious field and basically make yourself, known already just that way. So basically having high paying job.
But if you think that the getting into the prestigious university is the end, that a successful parent does for you, or a connected parent, that's just the beginning.
Of course.
They really not, these days, what I actually find, I don't want to interrupt you, but what I actually find is that a lot of these successful parents, they might as well not get their kid into a prestigious university. Because they've all got a bunch of connections that they can call up and get them a job.
Exactly.
And might as well send them to a community college and just write them a check for the $500,000 that college costs.
That's true. And to me, honestly, that is almost bigger to me than the wealth stuff. Of course, the inheritance matters a lot, but that's only when the parents die.
Right.
To me.
Right.
But the place that you grew up in is a huge, your environment is a huge, it affects hugely what your income is going to be when you grow up.
Yes, it does.
So in that sense, connections through wealthy parents is definitely even more of a factor. But to me, there's so many stories about people making it out of the mud. Former McKinsey CEO, Mr. Gupta, forget his first name, but that's a guy that, was in India. He was in Kolkata and just was in the slums. He was living in the slums as a child, but made it, just grinded, made his way up. MBA, Harvard Business School, and grinded his way all the way up to McKinsey. And it's McKinsey CEO.
It's pretty top.
It's top.
Is he still the CEO?
Well, the reason he was mentioned in the book I was reading, it was because he actually ended up getting a little too greedy and got jailed for insider trading. But
that'll do it to you.
That'll do it. Getting too greedy. But at the end of the day, to me, it's stories like his. It's a guy that's not even from America. But let's talk about America for a second. There's so many black entrepreneurs that are killing it out there. I mean, so forget about the exaggerated figures that we see in rap and basketball and all that. Let's talk about the regular kind of black entrepreneur that's doing a lot for himself. And there's a lot of those guys out there. And if anything, they have a bigger push to be an entrepreneur versus working a W-2 job. They kind of, from what I've, from the conversations that I've made, I don't want to generalize, but in the New York community, it feels like kind of the black community is even more entrepreneurial than the white community in a lot of ways. I think a lot more risk taking, and that's for historical reasons. But I don't believe that wealth inequality is everything, to be honest with you. It's a pretty strong opinion. But I think if you're a child, a person of color, and you grow up in the Bronx, somewhere in southern Bronx, let's talk about Mott Haven.
Mott Haven.
You grew up in Mott Haven over there. It's a rough life for you.
Hey, nothing ever good happened in Mott Haven.
What's your name is John, and you're a black kid in Mott Haven, up in the Bronx, and you're having a hard time. You're going home every day, and you might get robbed here or there. You might get robbed about 5-6 times a year. You got guys picking on you. You get into fights, but you're not getting into fights actually, because you're a smart guy and you stick to the books and you read a lot and you're interested a lot. And at the end of the day, you make it to college. You don't make it to a great college. You just make it to a college. You go to Hunter College. At Hunter College, you stay, you put your head down, you're in the books, you're in the library all the time, 4.0 GPA, you go to law school. You go to law school, and you go to a great law school. At this point, you could afford a little bit of debt. You go to Yale Law School, you go to Harvard Law School, whatever it might be. And you make it out of there, you're a very successful lawyer, leave, you could do compliance, but you could be an entrepreneur just that easily. But I'm just talking about a path of the traditional path of making it out. Mm-hmm. And that is a person, John, who grew up in Mount Haven, that through a lot more hard work than a person that's brought into a generationally wealthy family, but he could still make a name for himself.
So in that sense, I actually completely agree. When you come from a lower class family, education is your path out. Yeah. Because it's literally your path out. Your parents and those around you, your community members are not educated. Yeah. And education goes so much beyond what you know. It's just how you carry yourself in conversation, which is the social aspect of conversation and the business is 90% of it.
It is actually.
It's a huge percent of it.
Much more than we think.
And so education, part of getting education is just learning that, right? Mm-hmm. Learning how to be around somebody. Mm-hmm. And frankly, that's why I do think that those professional paths, becoming a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, out of even a banker, out when you're coming from a lower class family, that's exactly the path. But when you already come from an upper class family, or a very wealthy family, for example, if your parents are already if they're somebody, if they're known, if they know the mayor, the governor, surely they know a lot of business folks too.
Definitely.
Then education isn't the path the same way.
Exactly. So here's the thing.
It's just who you know. You get a job.
Yes.
Go to the next step.
Yes.
You get some seed money from somebody. You start your own business. We're in the age of digital media. You can learn anything. You can start a business and you can learn.
100%. And to me, all it's saying, just to wrap things up, to wrap up that thought is does generational wealth help you? Oh, it helps you immensely.
Immensely.
But is it impossible to come from a very, difficult background and still make it in this country? 100% yes. It still 100% exists. I believe the American dream still exists. It might not exist for immigrants in the same way that it did before, but it certainly exists for American citizens that are born into underprivileged situations.
Of course. So obviously you don't think billionaires are a bad thing. You're a real capitalist. You don't think billionaires are bad.
I am a full capitalist. Yeah. I believe that socialism has never worked and will never work. It has worked in some kind of halfway measures, like we see in the Nordic countries, but it has never worked in a proper communist setting. And even China, that we think about as a communist country, well, it's not communist. The whole reason that it's the second biggest economy in the world is because of special economic zones, Shenzhen being one of them, that they experimented on. And we have a lot of Chinese classmates whose families have huge businesses. They got a lot of dough over there in China,
and that's why they're here at NYU, because they're paying rack rate pretty much.
That's right.
They're not NYU doesn't have the same incentive to let a bunch of international kids in, because there are a ton of international kids who are paying, who are getting financial aid.
That's right. And lastly, I think we started with this episode with tariffs. We're going to end it with a little bit of a political issue as well. I think you have a lot of thoughts on this. I think you and I kind of talk a lot about it in private. What's the biggest issue politically affecting America right now?
So this is a very hot take, but I'm going to say it. I actually think it's abortion, and I'll tell you why. Now, abortion hasn't been in the news all that much recently.
It hasn't.
Now, in the last 5 years, it has, obviously, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But I still think that abortion is kind of this third rail issue, is what it's called. The reason being is it's such a controversial issue that the left have claimed, in a way. And they've claimed it in the sense that...
I think the right has claimed it, if anything.
Well, no, I think that the left have claimed it in the sense that if you disagree, you're not even just on the right, you're just a terrible person. You might as well just be thrown out.
Really?
So the right obviously has just as strong of opinion, right? The left and right, in fundamental pro-choice, the left, pro-life on the right, they are both equally valid opinions, and they are both, and each side is equally passionate about it. But on the left, they really, really villainize the people on the right and just claim that they are just attacking women. And I've seen far more pro-choice, protests and demonstrations in the media and on college campuses in educated circles than I have pro-life things. Now, there are obviously a fair share of pro-life,
yes.
Outside Planned Parenthood demonstrations and protests as well. But in general, the pro-lifers are labeled more as the villains in America, I think.
I'm going to push you back on this a little bit because I don't necessarily feel that this is exactly the reality of it all. Okay. I think that yes, the left is definitely more heard in the media when it comes to this issue, no doubt.
Sure.
No doubt. However, I believe that the right thinks that getting an abortion is the same as going up to a man and pointing a gun at him and shooting him right there on the spot.
I think they think that just as powerfully. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that they are as opposed to. Let me back up.
I don't know, man.
No. Let me back up. Yeah. I think that as an issue, if you can still be a Republican and be a little bit pro-choice, and I think the party will understand that to an extent. If you are a liberal and you're not 100% pro-choice, I think you're cast out of that party.
Oh, I see. I
see
what
I'm
you
saying.
Mean. I see
That's
what you
all
mean.
I'm saying about this.
Okay, and
I'm saying the right believes just as much. Right? Let me be clear. Believes just as much that you might as well be going to somebody and shooting them in the head as getting abortion. It's the same thing, and they believe that just as strongly as the left believes in pro-choice. Right? So don't get me wrong, but I disagree with the way the Democratic Party handles this issue. I also disagree with the way young people, a lot of young women specifically, right? Obviously, this issue applies to women mostly, and they're affected by it. I believe that they take this issue and it's all they vote on. And it's really all they care about. So it's become such a controversial issue in society that they're unable to separate themselves from it at all on the ballot.
Yeah, and I think it is kind of indicative of a broader push towards polarization in our country,
absolutely.
Which what I think is the biggest issue affecting us. It's social media. It's polarization of people believing that if you don't think the same as me, you are just a terrible person in general.
Yes.
So effectively, some of the country, the more radical parts on the left and the right, believe that everybody on the other side of the aisle is a devil. Basically, 50% of the population of the U.S. population, and that's a terrible thing that has affected politics.
And it's not like that in other countries, by the way. And other countries are seeing what's happening, the polarization in the U.S. I just read in The Economist about this. They are actively, starting to, stop believing in America's future because of polarization.
And I don't blame them at all. I think the fact that people can't come together on a single issue in this country is a huge issue.
Even William Rehnquist, actually, one of the most influential and impactful Supreme Court judges, so if you don't know, William Rehnquist was our Chief Justice from 1986 or so to 2006. And he was very controversial because he was thought of very conservative. But even he would come over to the left on a few issues, and they would have polite discourse. And this was 20 years ago,
so
right?
Important.
What we've dropped off so much in the last 20 years. It's just really unbelievable.
Hey, let's make a mental note on this because I know we're coming too close to an end here for this episode, but I really want to talk about what does free speech mean on a college campus? Because a lot of times we think of inclusive speech as inclusive of all genders, races, and whatnot, the descriptors. But I think I want to come to this and kind of ask you on a different episode. What do you think of potentially, inclusive speech excluding a lot of the conservative voice? Because I think sometimes just as centrists, we ourselves feel like we can't really speak out on this on campus. Exactly because of the polarization issue, because we feel like our classmates might cast us out as terrible human beings,
right?
Even though we're not even fully right leaning, we're kind of modest in a lot of ways.
It's true. I think it's a systematic issue, and the reason being is if we differ from a very liberal take that a professor might make in class.
Yeah.
If obviously we just worry about the repercussions if we say anything against it. So it's 100%. Just completely out of the cards. So to be honest with you, I'm not really sure how to answer that question because it's one of those things that we know is an issue, but what are we going to do about it?
Yes, that's right.
That's all it is.
That's right.
That's all it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Logic Over Impulse. Episode number 3.
Episode number 3.
We really appreciate you sticking with us through this. Please comment down below if you're on YouTube or on Spotify who you would like to see in a future episode. Please leave us a like if you made it this far. We really appreciate you. Have a good time. Bye-bye.
Peace.